People often treat faith as an undefined turning, a blind leap into the dark with no solid grounding. This idea of naive faith is a modern framework. The New Testament text presents a specific informational standard for belief. From the sermons in Acts to the opening of Romans, salvation was grounded in what God had already spoken through Moses and the prophets. Faith accompanied knowledge. Because modern believers often lack this prophetic context, they search the text for loopholes. They look for cases that seem to show salvation without that informational content. The thief on the cross is the example most people use to prove that faith requires no theological knowledge. This conclusion relies on the assumption that a criminal in Judea was ignorant of Jesus, the Messiah, and the Scriptures. If he truly knew nothing, then saving faith can be empty. However, the text does not support the idea that the thief was operating in a vacuum. Jerusalem at Passover was a city of public expectation, with massive crowds pressing through these narrow, sun-drenched stone streets. Jesus was not an obscure figure. His claims and the controversy surrounding him were widely known. Even at the scene of the crucifixion, the mockers used explicitly Messianic language, asking Jesus if he was the Christ. The thief's plea is precise. He asks Jesus to remember him when he comes into his kingdom. The word kingdom represents a defined expectation shaped by the law and the prophets, the anticipation of a king appointed by God, whose reign would involve suffering and vindication. The thief identifies the dying man beside him as a king whose kingdom is coming. He is performing recognition under contradiction. Jerome noted that the thief did not see Christ in radiant glory, but as a man fastened to a cross. He saw Jesus drinking vinegar and heard him cry out to God in agony. He saw the sign King of the Jews placed over his head. These specific events, the vinegar, the thorns, and the cry to God, directly mirror Psalm 22. The thief was watching the fulfillment of this suffering servant prophecy unfold, categories provided by the setting and Jesus' own words. The thief's faith was a quality of recognition. He correctly oriented himself toward the identity of Jesus as the Messiah. This requirement of prophetic recognition is an unbroken pattern across the New Testament. Paul's conversion in Acts 9 was a forced recognition that Jesus fulfilled the Hebrew Scriptures Paul already knew. When Peter speaks to Cornelius in Acts 10, he begins with events Cornelius already knew, then identifies them as the witness of the prophets. Saving faith requires exposure to what God has done, and the identification of Jesus as the one anticipated beforehand. Faith is measured by the quality of recognition. The amount of articulated knowledge may vary, but the identification of Jesus must be exact. The thief, Paul, and Cornelius share the same structural faith, operating under different conditions. The vast prophetic framework of Scripture can be condensed into a single high-stakes moment without losing its referential object. This is compressed faith. Even with minimal time, the thief identifies Jesus as the king promised by the Scriptures. The thief reveals what faith is when everything else is stripped away. True faith arrives at the content of God's revelation.